about what it's like being on set, Vic Lagina School of Porn.
Those stories left an impression. I think there's a female audience out there who would love to hear more about these stories because they are so real. You're not hearing these stories societally impact, like Oxy, eating disorders, drinking, and being mothers. It's a very feminine story. I love it. I mean, some of your dumbass choices.
I know when you're in this weird business, you're not going to get a partner with a good head on their shoulders. So you have to kind of look at the broken souls of the world and try to cram them into the square peg into a round hole, which is not the best thinking. I had to do is just get comfortable being alone. And I did eventually.
You did have relationships. What was endearing is how hard you were willing to make these relationships work. Your commitment to adopting bliss. I was moved. Like, here's a good dude.
You have a good heart.
In the porn industry, you could also make a documentary about your professional career. This could be a whole series.
There's still gold in those hills.
You're a great storyteller.
Thank you.
It was a fun ride. I sat in the tub way longer than I would have.
And the things that you said were jarring. Well, that was kind of wake people up out of their slumber. If they were listening to it when they were sleeping, and then you hear these loud porn noises from actual scenes.
Yeah. Drugs were you on when you were doing?
You love drugs.
I loved drugs. I'm better now. But when I was doing the first read, it was mine, a little bit of weed. Then the next day was, we're going to get coked up on this one. So I'm like, should I do an acid read? And the answer was yes. 8 o'clock in the morning, I took it. I read all of the lines straight through. At one point, screen and the words were moving around. About 6 or 7 personalities that came out. There's everything I learned over the years of being a pornographer and being a producer. I used it all for the audiobook. So people like the book. I like reading. And I had never listened to an audiobook. This was going to be whatever I decided it to be.
Not the stereotypical audiobook.
No, not.
It was a Meow Wolf interactive, like 3D thing going on in your. It was something like, normally you're sitting there, it's a linear listen. It was an assault on my ears at times. It's such an interesting profession to be in.
I'm a little more sane now. I'm doing way less drugs, that's for sure. We just really stick with weed and booze on occasion, and that's really it. Because the truth is, I didn't say I had to do those drugs, but that was my coping mechanism to deal with the insanity I was seeing every day and the things I was absorbing every day. By the end of my career, before COVID, when everything shut down, I was microdosing acid at work when I was shooting, just so I could be pleasant enough to do a good job. That's how much the job was crushing me. And I'd say the last 5 years, when third ownership took over, they sucked all of the joy out of the job and were asking for more. The money was good and they were constantly keeping me busy, but there was a trade-off. Slowly, I was losing my sanity. And I look at COVID as being a blessing, because if it continued, I don't know if I would still be here, because I would still be doing drugs to cope and numb myself, especially when you're dealing with performers with bad energy, trauma, and negativity. Because I realized when I started writing the obituaries of all the people who died, and when you start researching their obituaries and you start seeing why they died, what was going on, how many times they tried to commit suicide before they actually did, then the light went off. It was like, I was numbing myself because I was shielding myself from all of that. Because I didn't really come from that kind of a background. I came from a loving family and a lot of support, and that was not what you see in the industry. When it was all over and I was completely done with it, after I sold my studio and I was chilling, I don't need this anymore. That's when it started tapering off and being in a better headspace where I am now.
I feel like the sets should have therapy on site live at all times. Are people still showing up on drugs and alcohol, even though they say that they're not on drugs and alcohol?
I can't imagine there being a porn world where everyone is sober. I really don't believe there is sobriety in the industry, because I think a lot of people have their own poison, whether it's booze, opioids, and those are the legal ones, But when you realize that there were some overdoses earlier last year, and then there was one girl who was in a coma, this was all from overdoses. So it's still there. And it's dark. And that's what I've been trying to shine a light on, the mental health of people. But when you say there should be a therapist on set, I think you should go one step further. I think there should be a therapist interviewing people who are entering the porn industry and deciding whether or not they should be in it.
Let's say I'm interviewing to potentially be in the porn industry and you're the therapist. What questions would you ask me?
why are you here? Why are you getting into the industry? The answer is, oh, I just like sex and I think it'd be a good amount of money. Look, money is all of our motivators when it came to the porn industry. I think that's fair. But you have to look, what prescription medications are you on, if any? Let's start there. You start probing, just start having conversations with people and seeing what they are, looking into their eyes and seeing what kind of a person they are. And are they going in on their own accord, or is someone nudging them in it, like a boyfriend who is possessive and make money off of them? There's a lot of that going on as well. I think really just asking, why are you here? And then kind of giving the lowdown. Like there's a chapter, like the last lesson of Vic Lagina School of Porn is specifically for people when they sat down and they asked me, I want to get into the business. And I'd be like, okay, let's have a conversation. And you start asking questions. Are you okay knowing the fact that you're probably going to be exposed to herpes and, see what their reaction is? Do you know you're probably going to get an STD at some point, even though some of them are treatable? You may walk away with something that's going to be there for the rest of your life. How is your family? Do you have a relationship with your family? I think if you do all of these questions, you can kind of get an idea before you give them the stamp of approval to enter the porn industry. But more importantly, you need to give them, you're on set. What if this happens? What do you do?
Like what? What's an example?
This is what I was running in towards the end of my career, where I was feeling slippery slope. When I started realizing that a lot of performers that were being requested were born, like, say, after 95, 96. And now, at that point, they're much older now. But when I was in it, those were like the 19, 20, 21-year-olds. This generation grew up with iPads, iPhones, social media. They're not talking. What I was finding is a performer would go through an entire scene, not say a word, which in my assumption, everything's okay. We told everyone there's certain things you have to say. Stop, cut, no. If you say any of those, I know that you're having a problem and let's cut and let's regroup. But they wouldn't do it. Instead, they would power through. And when they were powering through, the next day they were like, I had a horrible shoot and I felt like I was taken advantage of. And I don't know what else I could have done. Because you can get about a million other things during a production. You're not trying to figure out what's going inside.
When they first come on set, are they instructed, use the following words for some reason, right? Like, do you explicitly say, use the word stop, cut, or is it implied?
There was always, hey, if you ever have an issue, just speak up. You assume, because for me, that's what was working for Gen X to the millennials. They all knew that if there was a problem, they could speak up. Gen Zs, it was more of a situation where I didn't feel like I could say anything. So I didn't. And before, the company would see things for what they were. But when they started validating that behavior, that's where I was like, I'm out, because I don't think I can operate in this atmosphere.
It's a slippery slope, and their brains are not fully formed yet if they're 20 years old. To be in this industry, it almost seems like you need to be a sociopath or a psychopath with absolutely no feelings at all in order to not get caught up in the drug addiction or coping mechanisms. It's so hard to not have any feelings or trauma influence unless you are really dead inside.
There were the few that were like, I just love sex. I'm not going to tell you that was a high percentage.
I don't know any porn stars. I know a couple of strippers, but my friends, no one really watches porn. I kind of do sometimes. But like, we never talk about porn. No one really has sex.
I have sex every day. Do you want to hear about it?
Women have told me they like watching gay porn. Men,
what kind of genre do you prefer to watch?
I don't watch it anymore. I'm so porned out that I'd rather just have sex with my girl. Energy for her.
I love this. You have turned this corner for yourself. I'm so excited for you.
Good for you. You turn that corner.
Well, the healing process was a couple of years after porn. I'd say when I was away from it and I wasn't working every day and I had a lot of time to reflect. And then when it came to writing the book, that's where it was like, we have to really start living a better life, making better choices. I would say that started way earlier. I think when I started writing the book, to be honest with you, when you start, like, when girls are boofing cocaine on your pool table, and that's just like, and it happens more than once.
Dude, we do not know. Okay.
Like, I do mushrooms. We don't drink. She's on weed. They were trying to like ladies.
Well, during the second boofing session, you're like,
I don't even know what that means.
It's when people put drugs up their butt because it gives them a better high. Yeah.
Oh.
I love that reaction. See, that was the thing. The second time that all this boofing went down, I didn't even care about it. I was like, oh yeah, boofing, that's old news. But watching people's reactions as it was happening, that's where I was like, okay, that's That's what's funny about it. But to get to your point, that's when I was like, all right, dude, like how much further can you really push this crazy shit? Maybe you should slow your roll a little bit. So it started back maybe 2016, 2017, but once I was away from it all, that's when the things that I had started to normalize, I was like, wow, that was really fucked up. Like the prologue and the epilogue and the scene that wasn't compliant that they didn't release that I wrote a chapter on. But you look at it, you're like, that was my day every day. Like, no wonder I was doing so many drugs, and no wonder my view of the world was so crazy. So when you take a few steps back and you're so far removed of it, that's when you really are healing, and that's when you're getting into a better headspace, which was probably around 2023, 2022, around that time where I was really starting to feel better. I no longer had this voice in my head guiding me anymore about avoid this girl, don't do this, don't do that. I mean, that's the whole point of the alter ego, talking all the way through was I had this voice, especially when I was living alone with dogs. Okay. What do you do all day except for either talk to your dogs or talk to your imaginary friend? And that's kind of what was going down for a minute. I don't hear that anymore, which is good.
From watching so much porn all day, every day, do you even enjoy sex after that when it's not that level?
So that is a common question, because anytime there was a potential partner or whatever, they'd be like, especially civilians, people in porn, different story. No one really cares. Sex is like a handshake, right? But in the civilian world, when you work up to that, the woman would always say, I don't know. I feel completely intimidated. I don't know if I can meet your expectations. And I'm like, well, what do you think my expectations are? I'm not going to tie you up and throw a ball gag in your mouth. It's not going to go, we're not going in that direction. Like, I was always pretty vanilla. It was more a sensual experience because sure, sex could be fun. It could be a boom, boom and be done. But at the same time, you actually want to try to have a connection of some sort.
I would be like, ooh, of course I'm going to critique my performance. I'm just like, I'm not very good. Of course, right now. And the chances, I'm just like, God, I don't know how I'd measure up. We're always comparing ourselves. Of course she wants to know.
That was always before it happened.
You're always going to be like, I wonder how I measure up.
Yeah.
They were concerned about that. They thought it was going to be like extreme, and that's not me at all. And it didn't really affect my sex life. Like, I still enjoy it and have a very healthy sex life that involves pushing the boundaries in order to get turned on. But I don't have to. So, yeah, I landed safely.
Yeah, this is a great story. Yeah. You can do so much good with it. You have a nonprofit where you bring awareness to the industry, looking out, because this is where you could do a lot of good. Because as you have more young people turning to OnlyFans, they're doing stuff, but they're isolating it at their place by themselves. At least porn, because we are of the same generation. I'm an Xer myself. And I think porn then was a group thing, right? You're going to have your camera guy. You're going to have at least a female and a male or whatever the circumstances, but at least you were a community. These poor kids, so isolated, they're going to get all squirrely, and then they have to talk to about it.
I agree with you. There's a lot that the younger crop needs to know.
What's your thought? You like it? Not like it?
I think it was great. I think for the longest time, the studios had the stranglehold on the money and the profits, and they were the ones making everything. So this leveled the playing field, especially when you had someone who was they use the term mainstream porn, which I fucking hate that term, because there's nothing mainstream about porn. If you're a porn star or sex worker, you'd probably not be able to bank anywhere because they will discriminate against you. Same thing with sex workers. If it was so mainstream, it would be widespread accepted, but it's not. So when I say that, it should be called studio porn, company porn, whatever it is. So now when, the platform started showing up, I want to say around 2016, 2017, it was a good way for another revenue stream for the performers. And if they were shooting studio porn, they were then building up their brand and building up their fan base. And once COVID hit and everyone was locked down, that is when, Pornhub saw astronomical traffic, but then that's when OnlyFans creators were making so much money that they were saying, I'm not going to work for studios anymore. I'm going to build on my brand. And I say, splendid. That's excellent, because you're the one on the front line. You should be the one making most of the money. And you literally spent your time in the trenches with the studio. You should get yours now, and you should have control of your brand and your money and your destiny. So I loved it. I thought it was great.
Agreed.
You started directing some OnlyFans. Do you prefer that over the studio?
I liked it because the days were a lot easier and you didn't have to worry about liability anymore because the performers were hiring you to shoot for them. The burden is on them. I liked it, but then I also felt that there wasn't a whole lot of creativity to it. They didn't want this polished product because their fans wanted more of the behind the scenes and, I don't know, be a little stalkerish when it came to their favorite porn star. So in that sense, it was kind of like, well, I'm overqualified to shoot this shit. I mean, that was the truth. But, you know, it was good for a while. The thing that was crazy was I was trying to sell the Brazzers quality to the performers for their OnlyFans, and they roundly rejected it in terms of just not showing up to studio, not using the studio, not using any of that. And that's when I knew, like, all right, dude, stick a fork in it because this is done.
Yeah.
We're finished with this.
How long were your feature films that you were creating with Brazzers?
Well, see, Brazzers only did scenes for their websites. You know, the doctor adventures, the ones that were involved in work or school or whatever. So those were 30 to 40-minute scenes. But I did shoot some features for Digital Playground, and I hated doing those, except for one. The Gang Makes a Porno. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That was the only one I liked because these features are basically a house of cards where you have this poorly written script with serious dialogue. They're not actors, and you're trying to get acting performances from them. So I'm like, all right, we're trying to shoot serious porn here. Like, let's stop this. But that's what it was. And then you have this shoot is scheduled and structured, and one variable gets pulled. Like, let's say your star has gonorrhea. Well, then that throws your entire shoot into chaos. So I wasn't a big fan of doing those, except for, you know, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because the day was smooth. Everyone wanted to be there. And I, at the end of the day, I thought the product was amazing. So that was the only good one. So how long were they? Maybe an hour and a half. Broke it up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't know. I assumed maybe it was a full feature-length film. I don't know.
Again, she's never seen porn.
Again,
Okay.
yeah, writing the script for these.
They should ask ladies to join them.
I think there were ladies. There were a lot of ladies actually writing these.
Right?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Pleasantly surprised.
Storyline, but then, I mean, how much storyline could there possibly
I
be?
could love the opportunity. I think I'm going to write my own porn. Just see if I could do any better with that limited amount of like dialogue. Could you achieve something just a little more interesting?
There was a couple.
Unique.
Yeah, there's a couple of parodies we did besides the Always Sunny one. It was one on Pleasantville, the movie Pleasantville, which was okay. I think it was called Pleasureville or something stupid like that. And then there was Ex Machina, which was, of course, Sex Machina. But again, those days were, 20 hours. 20 hours to shoot porn. Fuck that. I don't want to be there that long.
Wow. No one does that anymore, do they?
I just don't think there's a budget anymore because of the OnlyFans, And not only that, all of the trouble that Pornhub got into, the traffic is not what it was, despite what they might say about it.
I'm fascinated by the fact you witnessed porn overnight become something different than what you and I know it as.
When I was getting into it was when the internet was starting to boom, which is why it took off the way it did. It was a perfect storm of everything. But before that, it was all the features, the videotapes and everything.
Lindsay's, they had these shady-ass bookstores. There's not a window to be had, and it's always like branch shop. And you come out with these VHSs. Yeah, right? Then it went to DVDs.
Then the internet boom, that changed everything. I had the front row seat with the company that would change the entire business. Not for the good, but they had a pretty big reign of terror for a while there.
They have.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, the original owners, when we're talking now, the company that was known as Mansef, they're on their fourth name, by the way, just to give you an idea of how fucked up of a company it is. But they were Mansef, and they were the ones that started Pornhub. Their concepts were simple: big boobs, butts, and let's put a theme behind it, whether it's office or school or whatever. That was when it was growing. And then I think they were getting squeezed by the Montreal Mafia. So they decided to leave it and sell to this German software engineer that created a tracking system for clicks. He bought it. And then he took Wall Street loans, and then he was buying up everything from the gay sites to the dating sites to anything that was making money. At that point, they became the porn monopoly, the evil empire of porn, putting everyone out of business, especially since a lot of the copywritten material was on Pornhub, eating away at their profits because it was illegal to do it unless they sent in a form to say that's my federally protected copyrighted material. You got to take it down. It was huge for a while, and it stayed that way until the reckoning of 2020. And that's when everything really changed. But they're still the behemoth.
I have so many questions, but first of all, how did they come up with the title?
Honestly, basically, you just come up with any concept that has a little bit of a double entendre, and you've got your
Really?
titles. Yeah.
Really?
You
Yeah.
know, there are jobs out there where ladies will travel the world looking for nail polish color inspiration. It's a full-time gig. I'm picturing a bunch of people going out into the world and seedy streets at doctor's office. I don't know, to get like research about what it looks like.
It's always a MILF though.
Because that's a fantasy. You have to think very, very darkly and go against everything in your nature. Because look at what is being searched on Pornhub, and that dictated what was being assigned to us.
Oh, those were keywords.
Oh.
Yes.
That's an SEO keyword. Hence the German software guy who's like,
Yeah.
MILF. They love MILF.
Yes. For a while there was squirting, but then the stepdaughter, stepson, and all of that started cropping up. When I was shooting all this stuff, I would have some like sense of morality of what I would and would not shoot. And I have to look and I'd be like, okay, let's see what we're dealing with here. And when they had one of the performers who looked 15, but he was just small in stature, and he had an Adam's apple and he had some stubble. So I was like, okay, I can get through this and I can be okay with this. But there were some performers that were like, I'm not doing this. And that was fair. And some of them were all about it, but it was very much a hot topic for a while there. And they still do it. It's still huge. They all want to be thinking the fantasy that some creepy guy has with his stepdaughter. I mean, that's really what we're tapping into here. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not, I'm telling you, that's what we're dealing with here. That's why for a while there, they were asking us to shoot. It would have been consensual rape, but that was one where I was like, nope, hard no, not doing it. Because even if you're getting releases signed, even if you are feeding someone's fantasy that they say they have of having a rape fantasy, you're still putting rape out there. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I said no. Then it devolved into porn star punishment. That was the next level of what we did. And that only lasted about 2 years because it received a lot of blowback from a lot of people, credit card companies, everything, in terms of what they would allow to bill.
Were there any other scenes that you didn't want to film?
I was asked to shoot gay stuff, and I didn't do it because my feeling was if you take someone's money, you better do a really good job. And what is a heterosexual man going to know how to shoot good gay porn?
I would like that challenge. I would love to learn and see if I could possibly create a product. So
that was the reason. And there was requests for me to do trans stuff. And so I shot a few of those. I was completely out of place. And I was asking myself, why the fuck am I shooting this? Because I have no idea what I'm dealing with here. Plus the performers themselves. Like when I would shoot boy-girl porn, sometimes I would have big strapping men that would be able to open up for camera. Well, you're not getting a big strapping man really when you're dealing with two trans. You're dealing with looks like sometimes prepubescent teens trying to have sex. And
yeah,
and I was like, you know what? I'm not the guy for this.
Happened? Did you just like you had to finish it, right? You didn't stop.
Well, this was more of the OnlyFans stuff. So
Okay.
in my mind, it really didn't matter. They started doing that when porn went woke in, say, 2021. That's when they started to do the trans scenes, even though giving hard no's about it way before, even though it was very popular.
How many dicks have to be involved in order for it to go from softcore porn to hardcore porn?
There was a time when they wanted me to shoot softcore as well. And it was a lot easier when you had just a boy and a girl together. When you had, sorry, I should say man and woman because boy and girls, man and woman together. When you have two males and one female, you're like, what the hell am I going to shoot? Like I can only shoot her boobs jiggling so much before I catch a ball bag or shaft or something, you know? So that was, so I'd say to answer your question, just stick with one man, one woman.
It's not every day we hear ball bag. You should, because it's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Let's talk about the contraptions and like the drugs that the men use to stay.
Well, speaking from a man who's in his middle ages now, I would tell you that things slow down over time. When you had, say, 21-year-olds, they don't need anything, right? Unless they're shooting, multiple times in a day, and they still might not need anything. When they start creeping up in age, when they start getting desensitized to all the sex because they're working every day, then you have to start throwing in the PEDs like Viagra, Cialis, and everything else. But even that's not a magic bullet because, if the big head is not working, the little head will fall. So a good stud would not have to worry about being in his own head where his dick wouldn't work anymore. But then you start getting older and you start dealing with more things. Then you start dealing with Caverject, the injectable, which is they injected in the base of their dick and they would have a hard-on for a couple hours. Get through the hardest of scenes, which would be the double penetrations, the anals, everything else, the gangbangs, the live shows. Level of achievement if you're thinking about that. Guys who the Caverject is no longer working. So they do the implant with the pump.
Come on.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe that's a real thing.
Is it?
My lawyer said it is my opinion, and it's rumored that one had one, but there was another one who was very open about it. He was posting his surgeries and
Whatever. I mean, like,
everything
it's
else.
fine. Women have augmentation done. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, but like the one I talk about in the story was a girl told me when she was down there about ready to do a blowjob, he was pushing a button. It would cover up inflating noises. And then there's a button you push apparently, and it deflates.
I would love to see that.
Oh my God. I would love to see that in action.
I'm sure there's videos out there. I'm sure there's a guy on.
And then the girls are getting their makeup done. And they
Yeah.
with the butt plug for how many hours?
It's loosening the sphincter for anal sex. I mean, you have to do it. I mean, there are some that didn't need one, and you could just go right up there. But your average human female needed a butt plug for an hour or an hour and a half or two before they do anal sex. So it's
How
not.
long is the anal sex scene they're shooting?
Well, I mean, it just depends. Sometimes if they really liked anal, and there were that really loved anal, where you would have, say, 30 minutes of maybe even more, just straight anal sex. But you also have to realize that's also, you have to add on the fact that there were photo sets of everything. So there's a little bit more there as well.
What's the photo set?
We always called them, well, there was the pretty girl pictures, which were more like the glamour shots that would be on, say, a movie, like a movie box cover. That's really outdated because that really doesn't exist too much anymore.
Yeah.
But even then, for site design, they wanted to have nice, glamorous pictures of the models that they were shooting and promoting. After that, then you took like the intro stills, which was them acting out the lame intro that you have to speed through before you get to the point. And then you actually have to have the pictures of everything that we're going to shoot, which I loved because it was basically the choreography. The blueprint of what the scene's going to be. Because when you're ready to start shooting video, now you can just go straight through. And if they remember and they're paying attention to what's happening in the stills, they'll know what to go into next. And I don't have to cut and I can just keep rolling.
Interesting.
And I loved it when performers were so into it and such professionals where they would just go straight through. And I'd be like, okay, go home to the dogs now. Thank you very much.
How many times did you have to redo a certain part of it? Or do you just like keep going, even if they?
I mean, like unless they needed a call cut, or unless it was, messy for a variety of reasons, whether it be blood or poop or otherwise.
Oh my God! I just like seeing a squirm.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's actually kind of funny. Yeah, but unless like you needed where you needed a baby wipe and to wipe off something, I would just go. You just go. If again, my barometer was listening to the performers and following them. Because to them, I might have been the director, I might have been the head guy in charge, but really it's about them and about them having a good scene. So I could keep up. My camera skills were so good that I could keep up with them no matter what they were doing.
What do you mean? It just means you held in there? Well, how hard could it describe how it could be challenging?
My camera wasn't a small camera. It's a big, bulky camera where I'm doing manual zoom and manual focus as well, which isn't easy. What your documentarians do when they're in a war zone, that's what I was doing. And I was able to do it and move smoothly just to follow, to make sure it was lit properly, the penetration was there. It's not easy to do, but if you have the right tools and that's the right performers, that's where it became like seamless. That's why I liked working with the same guys over and over again, because they knew exactly what was up. And that's why I liked working with professional performers on the female side, because they knew exactly what was needed.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot goes into it besides, just sex. I mean,
That's what I
there's
find fascinating. That's the part I want to know more about, because it is like we only know what we're shown when it comes to this industry. So it's like, well, tell us those little things, because these really are professionals that are doing a job that the average person can't do.
And once the talent decides to retire from the industry,
Mhm.
what are a lot of the retired actors doing?
So if they don't see, now they can start OnlyFans and they can just keep making passive income, which I think a lot of them are still doing, because I think it's a great way of dealing with it. But the ones that I know are done, I mean, they were sometimes going into like nursing school to become nurses. Yeah. Or some, decided to open up body sculpting or yoga studios or
I better check with our new local boutique fitness gym and see.
They're
those are the
also
ones.
sculpt and
Yeah, body sculpting. But here's the thing. I think it's the grim reality is, first of all, they're easily recognizable. Okay. So going into, and this is why I say you shouldn't say mainstream porn, because if it was easy for people to leave porn and do something else after being in front of camera having sex, then they could do whatever they wanted afterwards. But a lot of times the options are somewhat limited, which is why I say I'm glad there's still revenue streams now in terms of OnlyFans and everything else.
They shouldn't be embarrassed. You're the one who's watching me.
right.
But
Listen, I agree with you, but society, not everyone thinks like you. Give you an idea, there was a podcast that was dealing with book reviews, and right away she's like, "I'm sorry, I don't do erotica," and I'm like, "Well, I wouldn't classify this as erotica. There's nothing erotic about it." And she goes, "Well, the topic of porn will make me uncomfortable," and I'm thinking, well, that's the reason why you should record, because that would be an amazing conversation. But most people are a little buttoned up, you know.
yeah, you got us to squirm.
Oh,
I think another important fact about the porn industry is that there's HR.
I think the reality of the situation is, and when you're dealing with when the shit was starting to hit the fan, when there were people saying that they were shooting and they felt that they couldn't speak up or powering through. And this was where I was like, okay, there was a brief moment where I was like, I'm going to go through the motions, just see if I can salvage the relationship with the company. At that point, I still liked the money. And I had suggestions of things that could be done, one of which was having a talent advocate on set. It's very much like an intimacy coordinator as it is in Hollywood. That was my suggestion. If there was ever an issue that someone felt they couldn't speak about, they could go to this talent advocate and they could address the situation as it's happened.
because it's hard
Right.
Yeah.
when you're
Sure.
vulnerable and naked and about to perform. To
Speak up.
Because thinking, why would I use that person's help? But if you think about it and you're like, you're about to have sex and you're like, wait, can you come here? Will you
Sometimes it's just easier to talk to the person right there.
tell them that this isn't working? I kind of do that
Right.
at work all the time. Okay, so I just needed a second to understand what this advocate would be doing on site.
I felt, look, if you're in the adult industry, having sex and anal sex on camera, have it in you at that point in front of 6 or 7 people. Why it's mean to tell me you can't speak up? That should be one of the things. If there's a welcoming pamphlet, there's not an effective union. Well, there is one, but it's like a vanity project for an old MILF performer. There needs to be a few hurdles in order for it to have some teeth. The reality is everyone's an independent contractor. So if they're not employees, what kind of teeth can a union have? So start there. You have to have everyone banded together to say, okay, our talent is part of the union and they have to be deemed as employees. And if there's a problem on set, they call their union representative and then they deal with it right then and there. Ideally, that would work if you're organized, but the porn industry isn't at all. So I don't think it will ever work as much as I think it should be.
We'll never get their PTO.
They wouldn't have their maternity leave.
We'll do a quick couple would you rather questions. Lightning round. Okay, physical love or emotional love?
Emotional.
Remove a period sponge or a butt plug?
Period sponge.
Sorry. Moving my leg.
Wait, I'm sorry. You said What was the question?
Period sponge. And the
Period
reason is if you don't get it out there, it will cause a very bad problem.
Yeah,
That wouldn't have been the reason why I picked it, but I agree with you.
agree with that. Okay, so let's see, stinky pussy or period pussy?
Period pussy. Every day, all day.
That was a tough chapter.
Well, how do we do
Die.
my ears?
Obviously, that's the one I'm most passionate about. There's just so many instances in personal life and also on set where you're like, how on earth is this happening right now? Why are you letting anyone down there? Why? And don't you smell it?
Hand job or blow job?
Oh, well, this is a what's the lubrication situation here?
Raw dog in it.
See, you can't do a hand job raw dog because there's chafing involved.
Hey,
So
wait,
blowjob.
hey.
We'll make it even. There's lubrication.
I might go for hand job, to be
Oh,
honest with you.
Oh,
Despite the fact that some people may think they're good at it, they're really not. And you don't have teeth involved with hands.
Safety.
No. Safety.
Oh.
There's unnecessary scraping. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
people that you've been with, they don't know better, or they just intentionally use their teeth.
Maybe a biologically small mouth. I don't know. I don't know what the story was.
Goodness, sir. Like, I can't remember.
Okay, would you rather shoot a cream pie cum shot?
Well, cream pie is a cum shot.
Oh wait,
So
the facial.
this is actually a very layered question here, because you could sometimes do a cream pie shoot, and depending on how far the man was inserted, it wouldn't come out at the proper time, which is an important part of a cream pie. I love it. I love it. The facial was more popular amongst viewers for whatever reason. So I would always say it was always performer choice, but I had a sense, unless I knew for certain they knew how to deliver a proper cream pie, facial was always the go-to.
Did you have to ever worry about their fake eyelashes? Because you know we all wear them, right?
Oh, they would come off during the scene all the time.
Oh, no, but what about the ones that are stitched on their eyes?
Oh, the ones that are weaved in?
Their hair extensions are probably all jacked up too by the end.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. No, they were messes by the end.
Are you like a clean freak now, just based on all of the cleaning that you had to do?
Yeah, I've always been kind of a clean freak. So that was always it. But now, I look back at the time when I was in the industry and I was single.
You talk about a handful of relationships.
No, I was single from 2015. I had an open relationship with a Dutch woman for 9 months. If that's technically a relationship or not, I guess it is. But I was single, I would say, for a good 5 years of being in the industry. And the last relationship with Jackie was like, let's be a little wiser and let's just kind of hang out with.
Because you were not making good decisions.
This was the deal. You always have that one relationship that defines all relationships after. And my engagement was that train wreck, dumpster fire, nuclear missile. I couldn't, in the relationship afterwards, there was a lot of boundaries and walls of making sure that I never went back to that shit show ever again. And I stuck with it. So my only option was, even though I was trying to date civilian girls during that time period, was just hanging out with girls in the industry. And going to my point, I always said that I was in the porn muck. It was pretty toxic, but now it's nuclear because it's a bigger talent pool. New things have come to light in terms of things that have gone around. And now you have a situation where, because everyone became open-minded about who they were having sex with, whereas before, if you did gay, stay on the gay side. If you were not, you stay on the straight side. And people were very rigid, and they would call people out because that's where a lot of the HIV risk laid. When it came to shooting with trans, that's technically part of that community, and the risk is still there. That's when things would get the waters became even more murkier, especially when you now have viral inhibitors that can make it so HIV doesn't show up on a test anymore.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So now this is why, one of the many reasons why I love being with one person, because you don't have to worry about this shit anymore.
Right.
Welcome to civilian life. It's boring, but it's safer.
Yeah.
It's
But I mean,
easier.
look, the reality was too, is that I knew who I was having sex with, how recent their last test was. So that was an advantage that you really don't have in the porn world, in the civilian world.
True.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell everyone where they can find you, follow you, buy your book.
Go to viclagina.com. And First, you could see the trailer that was shot for the book. Oh, you had a hard time with it?
Oh,
Yeah, I did. It was shocking.
it's too much. Just
The trailer was too much?
yes.
Some
I've
people
never
like
watched
it.
porn before.
This is
So,
the most corny thing she's ever watched, and it was yours in the last
Okay.
24 hours, sir. This is a big deal for my poor little Fritz eyeballs.
I'm sorry. I hope I didn't inflict any permanent damage there. Well, if you go to viclagina.com, you can link to Amazon where you can buy the print copy. You can link to any of the audiobooks. You seem to enjoy the audiobook. And it's also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're a Kindle subscriber, you can read it as part of your membership.
Yeah, I enjoyed it that way. Yeah, because I was trying to double team it through my eyes and my ears. So
It's good. There's like the whole book itself. I think you could see there was a lot of time and thought put into the whole layout of it, inside and out, cover, everything. I wanted to be sure that if someone spent money on a book, they were getting like their money's worth. So
you
it's
did
theirs.
substantial. You did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed reading it. It was a nice. Yay! Thank you.
Well, I hope you recommend to others because
We'll do it.
And if you want to review the book on Amazon, that
I'd be happy
also
to.
helps.
we will. 5
Yeah.
stars only.
Yeah,
Which
okay.
reminds me that if anyone's listening to this episode, 5 stars only, and follow it, honestly, Smartless, wherever you get your podcast.
Yes. Thanks.
I enjoyed talking to you. I hope I didn't give you too many psychic scars here.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. My Disney princess eyes and ears haven't finished processing yet.
How is the podcast business going so far?
Oh, it's good. We're like, let's see, we're 3 years in.
Or 3 years. And
Yeah,
twice
Okay.
a week, 2 episodes a week.
Yeah. So we've definitely evolved from like day one to now. So it used to be a little bit more serious-ish. And
Oh yeah, we attempted to be serious.
yeah, we attempted to be serious and we're like, we're not serious. And then we did a couple of rebrands. We met because we worked together. We got fired together. So it was So Fired originally. And then, it's all about like turning the negative into positive. So it was a little bit more along that line. Yeah. We're like, why are we pretending? We're just 2 dumb girls chit-chatting every week. And we just want to have a fun time, good conversations. So
We think we're funny, so
built up a lot of momentum.
yeah, we're great.
I think it's wonderful. It's great.
Yeah, it was fun. I hope to have
It was
more
fun.
people such as you. Yeah, no, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for your time.
It was really
Of course,
fun.
I'm very curious. Like, who else do you usually get? I must be completely different than most of your guests.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you're only the second man we've had on.
Yeah. But
Nice.
it was our goal because I said, Lindsay, let's kind of think outside the box. And this is a great, because we never take a risk on something like this. Because we too pigeonhole ourselves for fear of what people will say and their response. And we've already just in our personal circle, they're like, oh, that's taboo to have a porn director on.
Like, oh, like what if you can't get a job in the future?
Don't
because this
do
popped
that.
Up? We're
And,
like, fuck that.
And like guys are trying to censor us, like just our guy friends, her husband. And like as a result of just having you on. And I was like, no, I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm going to have who I want. And this is exactly what I'm talking about is like, yeah, no, it was really, really great.
Yeah, that's
so
what you.
surprised.
Yeah, that's what you just said. It makes you realize that mainstream porn is not the proper word
No,
or
it's not.
phrase.
I think any of it, like as much as people we think we're open and it's so abundant, it's yet we have these double standards.
Oh yeah. There's like shame and you should be embarrassed, and
That's how it is to be a woman.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like how it is to be a woman.
It's just like being a woman. You should be embarrassed about everything.
Well, in the
and
sense that like
be
we're
yourself.
here, but we don't like really fully like. Anyway, so yeah, no, it's amazing. It was such a great time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, all right.
I know you should make like a mini series, like behind the scenes,
A documentary.
documentary.
Doing about like you could do it from so many different perspectives. One is which like the actual performers and like the mental health issues. You should definitely start legislation, and you should start a nonprofit of some sort supporting the because then you could let people start and run with it, but you put it in your name and like you honor it, especially to the ladies that you've lost. You could make these scholarships in their names. There's a lot of ways to really, you got a lot of opportunity in that like landmine down there.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens at the Avian Awards. If I win the award, I'm gonna.
You don't need the award to win. You already won. You just have to now put it out there. Do you know what I mean?
But I think the speech itself, if it happens, that'll turn some heads.
It would be, what would it say? Just like,
You just have to wait.
January 27th.
But
Something like that.
Well, what are you going to work on next?
Like I said, I'm going to start just thinking about essays to write about topics that I have in my head. I'm also going to tap into deeper, like my one production manager, Pete, who was featured on the audiobook. We're going to sit down, we're going to record, we're going to dig out some of those stories because he's been away from it for a while now too, but I want to know what he remembers. And with all those scenes I shot, 3,792, I just have to start going through those folders and releases and be like, oh, I remember that day and this happened. Because there's only so much I could do in the book. So if I keep capitalizing on that, I think I can have more content for people.
Exactly.
You could have 3,792 podcast episodes breaking down.
Yeah.
You should have a podcast. Oh God, you should.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things you could do. Oh my God, you got your own Netflix series sitting. If you could repackage it so it's like a YA like genre of book reading, you could do like a true crime series for your your one lady friend specifically. So you do 4 episodes of that. What else? Dude, you are so lucky. You don't even have to do anything. You have to like fucking carve it out of nothing. You're like sitting on a shit ton of content.
Yeah, well, we will see how far this goes. I mean, look, there are Hollywood people kicking the tires on everything right now. So let's just, I'm going to keep riding the wave.
Yeah, yeah. Fuck yeah, dude. You put your time in. You go get it.
Yeah.
Get it, girl. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.